You'll see it in books or movies all the time. Someone felt a prickling at the back of the neck. Someone got the strange feeling that they were being watched. This is just a way of our body telling us that we are in danger. Here are 3 horrifying stories of stalkers that will haunt you whenever you're walking alone at night. Last year I was going out for drinks with my friends, but since I had to go to university the next day I only stayed till around midnight. My boyfriend promised to pick me up and go home with me, because I don't like to take the subway alone at night. Since I was pretty drunk by then, I took a little too long walking out of the pub. Unfortunately, we had to wait for the night bus, with multiple stops, since the subway closes on midnight at weekdays. For context, my boyfriend and I don't live together but very close to each other, around 15 to 20 minutes walking distance. Both areas are pretty crappy. He lives near a train station, many crackheads, homeless and sketchy people around, and I live in cheap bad district with a high crime rate. My building has 2 entrances on 2 different streets because it is a corner building leading to a patio and then to the apartment building and its doors. To get into my apartment, I have to open 3 doors. I usually use the entrance door that is nearer to the subway and on the side of my apartment. We had to take 2 buses to go home, one drove us to the train station and the next one from the train station to my apartment. After getting out of the first bus we realized that we would have to wait for around 20 minutes or something for the second bus to come, and since I really had to sleep at home for the class next day, I didn't want to stay at his place. My boyfriend didn't want to wait, so he persuaded me to walk instead of taking the bus, which sober me would have never done, but since I was still drunk, I didn't care how we got home, so I agreed. So, we started to walk home and passed a few sketchy people, mostly selling drugs, but nothing really bad. Then I saw a guy walking in our direction, and I somehow got a bad feeling. I told my boyfriend that I wanted to change to the other side of the street because I didn't want to walk past him. Suddenly the guy yelled "Hey!" as if he wanted to ask us something, but we ignored it and continued to walk. He got louder and louder until he started to yell. I could see from the corner of my eye that he was coming over, so I whispered "Run" to my boyfriend, took his hand and ran the fastest I could while he was chasing us. We ran and then made a turn to the right, the street where I live, and hid. It seemed like he was gone, so I took my keys out and we started running towards my building, taking the other entrance of my building that I normally didn't use. As I was trying to open the door my boyfriend started panicking, throwing me inside the patio and closing the door aggressively and then pushing me to the building. He explained that the guy came running from the other side of the street, meaning he took a shortcut, thinking we were going to run to the subway or bus stops. If we had taken the other entrance he would have been clearly the faster one. We unfortunately didn't call the police, which I regret. I stopped going out for drinks or clubbing for half a year after this and slept at my boyfriend's place for 2 weeks because I was scared that he would come back. I think the worst thing about this is that he really wanted to get us for whatever reason. I still want to know why he chased us for so long. 2 weeks later a girl a few streets away was harassed in front of her building by a guy who chased her home. I wonder if it was the same guy. I live in a medium-sized apartment building in a fairly major city. While the neighborhood I live in is more on the safe side, violence is very high in my city as a whole, and we have a big trafficking problem. Despite this, I feel pretty safe going out, especially close to my apartment building where it is mostly well lit, and I am friendly with a few of the regular homeless people. Last night I got a reminder that my safety isn't guaranteed, and I have been pretty shaken since. Around 12:20 a.m. I asked my partner if he wanted to share a joint with me, and when he declined, I locked the apartment and went downstairs myself. The exit I take spits me out on the main street where there is still the occasional car driving by at this time. Usually this type of human presence comforts me walking late at night, but tonight a lone black van approached in my peripheral and started to drive slowly, matching my walking pace until I rounded the corner and the van was stopped by a stoplight. I found it very strange at the time, but the van was on the other side of the street and there were 1 to 2 other cars, so I brushed it off. Around the corner there is a little food truck area with a bunch of picnic tables. They have like Christmas string lights hung up and a few other ambient lights that are kept on whole night, but it barely illuminates the area. As I'm walking past the picnic tables I notice a large man dressed in dark clothes sitting alone at one of the back tables. He was wearing a hooter hat so I couldn't see his whole face, but his eyes followed me as I walked the border of the picnic area. My usual smoke spot is behind a fence on the other side of the picnic area. I was a little shaken by spotting that man and also didn't want to upset him by smoking near him, so I chose a slightly further spot against the side of a construction vehicle. I lit my joint and start puffing away and reading something on my phone. I soon start getting this really uneasy sensation. It felt like all my hairs were standing up and I got the most intense goosebumps I've ever felt. My phone was still playing music and as I turned it off I heard this shifting and rustling of gravel on the ground behind me. I swung my head around and saw a man reaching towards me with huge hands. I only caught a glimpse of his face before I fell to the ground. His eyes were wide, bulging, and extremely dark. They terrified me. His mouth was agape and he was basically snarling at me. He scared me so bad I fell to the ground, stumbled, and broke into a run all in like 1 second. I ran for a few seconds before I peeked behind my shoulder and saw him a couple yards behind me. At this point I saw it was definitely the man who was sitting at the picnic table, and I now saw that he was wearing what looked like a dirty bucket hat. He had shoulder-length dirty light-colored hair and was way taller than me. He was definitely gaining on me as I had lost ground by turning around and I am not in the best shape to begin with. I was about to reach the first entrance to the building, but the issue was 1, there were double doors at this entrance that closed quite slowly, and 2, the only way up was an elevator, so if he got inside with me I was so out of luck. I kept running, taking my chances with my running ability versus quickly opening doors ability. I kept running along the other side of the building to get to the second entrance to the building. This one is just 2 single doors which open to the stairwell up to my apartment. It's above the second floor, that's all I'll say because I'm still scared. As I'm nearing this entrance, I see another man who appears to be speed walking directly towards me from the opposite direction. I should note that throughout this I have been hearing the growling of the first guy behind me, and as the second man gets closer I hear he is also growling. I reach the keypad, unlock the first door and quickly slam it closed behind me until I hear the lock click again. The second man reached the door first and I saw his face more clearly as it slammed against the glass window of the door. He was also tall with longer hair and I remember he was wearing overalls. But I mostly remember his wild eyes and his teeth that he gnashed at me right before I turned away, opened the second door and booked it up the stairs. I didn't even stop until I was in my apartment, had all the doors locked, and was under the covers. I think in retrospect I didn't hear any sign of them following me up the stairs, but I was so convinced they were still on my tail. I think the only reason I got away from them was that they didn't know about this side entrance to my building, so they didn't expect me to keep running past the first entrance. I got up to get my inhaler, was having a near asthma attack at this point, and peeked out the window. My heart sank. I saw the same van that had creeped me out earlier parked across the street from the entrance to my building. The entrance is like right below my apartment window. I then looked down to see 3 men pacing along the side of the building, including the 2 that had chased me. I ducked down fearing they would see me. A few minutes later they start shining flashlights into the windows of apartments. At first I think of course it's only my apartment, but after a while it's clear they're just searching for me. At this point I try to call my building manager to let him know about the situation, and he sent out a text alert to our all building list. I was so paranoid another innocent person would be accosted by them, so I called the police. They told me they were on their way and to stay out of the window in case they were armed. A few minutes later the men are spooked by a faraway police siren and get in the van and peel away. I think it was from a different 911 call, because when the officer arrived to our building the siren wasn't on. I spent a long sleepless night thinking they'd come back but they never did. Definitely going to avoid being alone at night from now on. I asked one of the homeless guys I am friendly with if he saw anything suspicious last night, but he said he hadn't. They couldn't have been residents because they didn't leave after management sent that alert to us. The part that sticks with me the most is the growling and intense look in both their eyes. I don't know if they were on drugs or what, they never said any words to me or each other. Haven't heard any updates from the cops, but it's only been a few hours, and they didn't seem that interested in my statement as the van had disappeared when they left. This happened years ago, but the thought of it still keeps me up at night. I was walking through the hills of a provincial park with my dog during winter, so the sun set much faster than I expected, and before I could get back to my car. Once the sun was gone and all you could see was darkness, I was walking slowly through a field when out of nowhere I had the most gut-wrenching, undeniable feeling that I was being watched. I turned around, and in the distance, I saw a figure standing there, darker than the night sky around us. The instant I saw him, my stomach dropped, and my body literally froze. I knew in that moment, somehow, he was coming for me. I grabbed my dog's leash and we booked it, I mean sprinting, full speed, up and down hills, around trees, down embankments. I was running so fast as if my life depends on it, and to this day I'm sure it was. I make the 30 to 45 minutes trip in 10 minutes, and all that stands before me and my car is the switchback you have to go back and forth up if you want to reach the top. So once again, I am giving it all I got, running up the switchback as fast as I possibly can, and once I reach the top and look back down. Who else but this person chasing me? And does he go up the switchback like how any sane person would? Of course not. He starts sprinting right up the middle of this goddamn switchback, headed straight for me. I scream at him F off. And he doesn't say anything. Not a single word. Just continues running right at me. I am so lucky my car was at the top of that hill, because as I ran towards it, just like in the horror movies, I drop my keys and are fiddling with them trying to open the door. Just in time, I get the door open, throw my dog in and shut the door behind me, just as this guy reaches us. Best part is, there were no other vehicles parked anywhere around us, but where did this person park? Yeah, right next to me, of all places. Now this guy literally jumps into his truck so fast, and to this day I have never seen a better example of speeds out of there like a bat out of hell. He guns the engine so hard, black smoke is blasting out the back as he swerves out of there, leaving skid marks behind him. I sat in the back of my vehicle for hours afterwards, shaking and crying, knowing I was this close to whatever he had planned for me. And that's why I'm sharing this story, in hopes that people won't ignore that gut feeling, the little voice in the back of your head that tells you to run. If I didn't that day, I never would have noticed him in time, and would not have had the head start I needed to escape. Always trust your gut feelings.